Takeshi lived a quiet life in a small Japanese town. He was not famous, not rich, and not someone who liked attention. Every morning, he opened the small wooden windows of his house and let the soft light fall on his calligraphy table. He breathed slowly, moved slowly, and lived slowly. People said Takeshi's calmness was almost unnatural, like he carried a secret peace inside him. But Takeshi had no secrets. At least, that's what he believed. On a cold evening, clouds covered the sky like dark curtains. The wind pushed through the narrow streets, and the sound of chimes echoed across the houses. Takeshi sat inside, practicing his daily calligraphy. His brush moved with grace. The ink spread like quiet shadows on white paper. He felt safe in his small routine, but outside, something strange was waiting. Just as Takeshi finished his last stroke, he heard a soft knock at his door. It was not loud, not urgent, just one gentle knock. He stood up slowly. He was not expecting anyone. He lived alone, and his neighbors usually never visited this late. Takeshi opened the door. No one was there, only the cold air rushed in. He looked left, then right. Empty street, silent houses. He was about to close the door when he saw a small paper lying on the ground. It looked old, very old. The edges were torn, the surface slightly burnt, as if someone had tried to destroy it, but failed. Takeshi bent down and picked it up. The first thing he saw were strange symbols. They were not normal Japanese characters. They looked like something ancient, something not used in the modern world. The symbols curved and twisted in a way that made him feel uneasy. At the bottom of the paper, there was a single sentence written in black ink: "Control the mind. Pay the cost." Takeshi froze. Control the mind. What did that even mean? For a moment, he laughed softly. Maybe a child played a trick. Maybe someone left trash near his door. But deep inside, something pulled him toward the message. A strange curiosity, a strange fear. He locked the door and sat near his lamp. He placed the paper on the table and stared at it. The symbols almost looked alive under the light, as if they were moving slightly. Takeshi rubbed his eyes. He was tired. He told himself not to overthink, but the sentence stayed in his mind like a whisper: control the mind, pay the cost. Takeshi leaned back and closed his eyes. Suddenly, a memory from his childhood returned. He remembered his grandmother sitting under a tree, telling him strange old stories. Stories about monks who could slow down their heartbeat. Stories about warriors who could hide their emotions so well that enemies could not read them. Stories about people who could see through lies, fear, and anger. Back then, he never believed these stories. Now, that old paper made them feel real again. He held the paper in his hand and felt a small vibration, almost like a heartbeat. Takeshi dropped it immediately. His breath quickened. He stared at it, confused. Papers do not move. Papers do not feel alive. He touched it again. This time, nothing happened. Maybe it was his imagination, but something inside him whispered, "This is not normal." Takeshi tried to return to his routine. He made tea. He cleaned his brush. He walked around the small room. But every time he looked toward the table, the paper seemed to pull his eyes. He wanted to ignore it. He wanted to stay safe. He wanted to stay normal. But some part of him, a part he didn't know existed, wanted answers. Hours passed. The night grew deeper. The wind became stronger. And Takeshi still could not sleep. His mind kept returning to the sentence. He repeated it in his head like a chant: control the mind, pay the cost. Finally, he stood up. He could no longer fight the curiosity. He had to know where the paper came from. He had to know who left it at his door. And most importantly, he had to know if the message was meant for him or for someone else. He put on his coat, lit a small lantern, and stepped out into the night. The town looked different at this hour. Shadows moved with the wind. The streets felt longer, darker. Somewhere in the distance, A dog barked. Somewhere else, a window shut quickly as if someone was watching him. Takeshi walked slowly, his steps echoing on the stone path. He had no idea where to go, but something guided him. He reached the old part of town where houses stood close together. Here, time felt heavier. The air was colder. As he turned a corner, he noticed a dim light coming from a narrow alley. It flickered like a candle, struggling to stay alive. Something inside him said, "Go there." Takeshi followed the light. The alley was so narrow, he could touch both walls with his hands. The ground was uneven. The air smelled of old wood and rain. At the end of the alley was a small tea house he had never seen before. Its wooden sign was faded, its door cracked, but the light inside was warm. Takeshi hesitated. His heart beat faster. He felt something, a pull, a warning, a promise. He stepped forward. Just as he lifted his hand to knock, the door opened by itself with a slow creak. The warm light spilled onto the cold alley. Takeshi froze. Inside, he could see the shadow of someone sitting at a table, someone who seemed to be waiting. Takeshi swallowed hard. He did not know who this person was, but he knew one thing clearly. Whoever left that paper knew he would come here, and now there was no turning back. Takeshi stepped inside the tea house, slowly, almost afraid to breathe. The door closed behind him with a soft click, like a whisper, telling him he was no longer free to walk away. The room was warm, lit by a single lantern hanging from the ceiling. The light created long shadows on the walls, making the place feel both safe and dangerous at the same time. In the center of the room sat a woman, thin, still, sharp-eyed. She didn't blink when Takeshi entered. She simply watched him with the calmness of someone who had already seen this moment many times. Takeshi opened his mouth to speak, but she raised one hand, a small, slow gesture, and he fell silent immediately. It was not a command, not an order, but somehow he felt compelled to stop. Her presence controlled the room. "You came," the woman said softly. Her voice was smooth, but carried weight, like she knew everything that would happen next. Takeshi felt a chill. "Did you leave the paper at my door?" The woman's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, but something close. "If you received it, then it was meant for you." Okay. She motioned toward the seat in front of her. Takeshi hesitated for a moment, but then sat down. The chair creaked under him. His heart beat fast, but he forced his face to stay calm. Something about the woman made him feel like any small reaction would reveal too much. "My name is Aiko," she said, "and I know why you were here." Takeshi swallowed. I don't understand the symbols." Or the sentence. Aiko leaned forward slightly. Her eyes locked on his. They were dark, but not empty. They were full of old stories, long secrets, and quiet suffering. "The symbols are part of an ancient technique," she explained. "A technique used by a very small group of people. A technique that allows one thing, and one thing only," Takeshi whispered. "Control the mind." Ko nodded. "Yes, but not the way you think." Takeshi's fingers trembled slightly. He hid them under the table. "Why me? I'm just a calligraphy teacher. I'm nobody." Iko looked around the room, then back at him. People who are nobody often become the most powerful. Their minds are empty of arrogance. Their hearts are quiet. They can learn what others cannot. Takeshi lowered his eyes. He didn't feel powerful. He didn't even feel brave. But something inside him, a small spark, wanted to understand the truth. Aiko lifted her hand again, this time pointing at the paper Takeshi still carried. "That is not just a message. It is an invitation." "Invitation to what?" He asked softly. "To a forbidden technique. One that can break a man or make him more than human." Takeshi felt a cold wave run through his body. He placed the old paper gently on the table. Aiko looked at it with a mixture of respect and sadness. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, They were sharper. Before anything, I must warn you. This technique is not magic. It is training. Hard, painful, slow training. And every use of it demands a price from you. Takeshi leaned forward. What kind of price? Aiko hesitated. You will understand later. For now, you should know only one thing. Once you begin, you cannot go back. Your mind will no longer be the same. The lantern flickered, as if reacting to her words. Takeshi nodded slowly. Then, teach me. Aiko stared at him for several seconds, studying his face, his breath, his fear. Finally, she stood up and poured tea into 2 small cups. The tea smelled old, like herbs mixed with something bitter. Drink, she said. Takeshi obeyed. The tea was warm, but its taste was strong enough to make his eyes water. Aiko watched him carefully. With this tea, she said, your mind becomes calm. And in calmness, truth appears. She placed her hands on the table. Now, we begin. Aiko guided Takeshi through the first step, a simple breathing pattern. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Exhale for 4 seconds. At first, it felt easy. Takeshi followed her instructions, his eyes closed. But soon, something strange happened. The world around him faded. The sound of rain outside disappeared. The warm light of the lantern dimmed. He felt himself sinking, not physically, but mentally, as if he was falling inside his own thoughts. Do not fight it, Aiko said calmly. Your mind is opening. But Takeshi did feel like fighting. He felt pressure in his chest, a tightness he couldn't explain. Then a memory pushed its way to the surface. A memory he had not thought about in years. A young boy crying alone in a dark room. A voice yelling. A broken cup on the floor. A feeling of helplessness. Takeshi gasped and opened his eyes. His breathing became uneven. He felt sweat on his forehead. What? What is this? He whispered. Aiko watched him without surprise. The first step of the technique is to face what your mind hides. Every fear, every memory, every wound. They all rise before you can control anything. Takeshi looked down at his shaking hands. I don't want to see this. Aiso's voice remained steady. No one wants to. But the mind cannot be controlled if it is full of shadows. She handed him a cloth to wipe his sweat. Takeshi hesitated, but took it. The technique, Aiko continued, is not about controlling others at first. It begins with controlling yourself. Your fear, your anger, your hidden memories. Takeshi looked at her with confusion. So it's not about power. Aiko smiled faintly. Everything becomes power in the end. But the beginning is always pain. She stood up and walked to a small drawer. From it, she took out a thin wooden box. She opened it and took out a small black string with a symbol carved on a tiny stone. This is your first oath, she said. Wear this only if you truly want to continue. If you choose this path, your life will change. You will lose things. Maybe even parts of yourself. Takeshi stared at the stone. His pulse grew louder in his ears. What happens if I refuse? He asked quietly. Aiko looked at him with sad eyes. Then you walk out of this place, return home, and forget everything. The technique will never touch your mind again. Takeshi took a deep breath. His hands trembled. His heart felt heavy. He looked at the door behind him. He could leave. He could return to his simple life, calligraphy, tea, silence. But the thought of walking away felt wrong. He had opened a door, and the person he was yesterday no longer existed. Slowly, Takeshi reached out and picked up the black string. He tied it around his wrist. The moment he did, he felt a small pulse, like a heartbeat, against his skin. Aiko bowed her head. Then your training begins. The lantern flickered again, and the shadows on the wall grew longer, deeper. Takeshi woke before sunrise the next morning. The sky outside was still dark, and the air carried the smell of night rain. He sat on the edge of his thin mattress, his hand resting on the black string tied around his wrist. The memory from the night before still shook him, the sudden return of his childhood fear, the strange way the tea house seemed to breathe, an ICOs.com voice telling him that pain was the first step. He was not the same man he had been yesterday. His mind felt heavier, but also strangely open. Takeshi washed his face, changed into fresh clothes, and walked toward the old part of town. He felt a pull guiding him, the same pull that had guided him toward the tea house the night before. When he reached the narrow alley, the warm lantern light was already glowing softly through the window. Aiko was waiting for him. "You came back," she said, without looking up. Takeshi nodded. "I said I would," Kataiko replied. "Then today, we go deeper." She motioned for him to sit. Takeshi took the same seat as last night. This time, he noticed something he hadn't before: symbols carved into the wooden table. The same symbols he had seen on the old paper. Some were faded. Some looked freshly carved. Aiko saw him looking. "These marks," she said, "are reminders. Every student of the technique leaves their symbol here when their training begins." Kishi traced one of the marks with his finger. It felt warm, alive. He pulled his hand back. Aiko placed a small bowl of water on the table. "Today, you learn the second step, the step of internal stillness." Takeshi sat up straight. "I'm ready." Aiko shook her head. "No, no one is ready. That is why this step is dangerous." She handed him the bowl. The water inside was perfectly still. Not one ripple. "Takeshi," she said softly, "your mind is like this water. If something touches it, even lightly, the surface breaks." He nodded slowly. "Your task," ICO continued, "is to keep the water still, no matter what memory comes, no matter what emotion rises. If the water breaks, your mind breaks with it." Takeshi swallowed hard. "What do you mean, breaks?" Aiko looked at him with quiet sadness. "The technique takes something from you each time you fail a memory, a feeling, a sense of time. Small things at first, but they grow." Takeshi felt a chill. "And if I succeed?" Aiko leaned back. "Then you gain control over a part of yourself most people never touch." Takeshi held the bowl carefully. He closed his eyes and began the breathing pattern she taught him. Inhale, hold, exhale, slow, steady, soft. At first, he felt calm, but then the world around him faded again. Just like last night, he felt himself falling inward. A voice echoed. A door slammed. A broken toy on the floor. A child's cry. His cry. Takeshi's breathing quickened. His hands shook. He opened his eyes and looked at the water in the bowl. A single ripple appeared. Just one, but one was enough. Suddenly, a sharp pain hit his head. Takeshi gasped and nearly dropped the bowl. Aiko grabbed his wrist. "Don't let go," she commanded. Takeshi held the bowl tightly, but he felt something slipping. Not the bowl. Something inside him. A piece of thought. A piece of memory. Something he couldn't name. The ripple slowly faded. The water became still again. The pain stopped. Aiko studied his face. "What did you lose?" Takeshi blinked. I don't know." "Think," she insisted. He tried. He searched his mind like a man searching a dark room for a missing object. But there was an empty space. A small one, but real. "I think," he said slowly, "I forgot the smell of my mother's perfume." Aiko closed her eyes. "A small loss. You are lucky." Taki stared at the bowl. "This is the cost." Aiko nodded. For now, took the bowl from him and placed it aside. "The technique shows you one truth," she said softly. "The more you try to control, the more you must give up. But without control, you remain a prisoner of your own fear." Takeshi breathed deeply. His hands were still trembling, but he felt something else too, a strange stability inside him, like he had taken a step forward on a path he did not fully understand. Aiko stood up and opened the tea house door. "Come," she said. "Your next lesson is outside." They walked through the alley and into the wider street. The morning sun was rising. A few people were already awake. A baker opening his shop, an old woman sweeping the front of her house, a young boy chasing a dog. Aiko stopped near a small market stand where a young woman stood, crying softly. Takeshi recognized her. She worked at a fruit shop across town. Today, she looked pale, trembling, like something had shaken her deeply. "She is afraid," Aiko said. "Go to her." Takeshi's heart tightened. "Why? What do I do?" "Help her mind calm," Aiko said simply. "Use your breath. Use your stillness. Use your focus." Takeshi hesitated. "But I've barely learned anything." Aiko looked at him with sharp eyes. Fear never waits for perfect training. He stepped forward, slowly. The woman looked at him with wet eyes. "Sorry," she said softly. "I'm just overwhelmed." Takeshi stood close, but not too close. He inhaled, held, exhaled. He let his own breath become steady. Then he spoke in a soft voice. "You're safe," he said. "Breathe with me." The woman followed his rhythm. Slowly, her shaking stopped. Her face relaxed. Her tears dried. Her breathing steadied. After a minute, she smiled weakly. "Thank you. I don't know why, but I suddenly feel lighter." Takeshi nodded. "I'm glad." She walked away, calmer than before. But Takeshi's smile faded quickly. His head felt light. Something was wrong. He pressed his fingers to his temple. Aiko watched him. "What did you lose this time?" Takeshi searched his mind. A moment later, his eyes widened. I can't remember what I ate for dinner last night," he said. Aiko nodded. "Small memory, a harmless one. But each act of control takes something. Now you understand?" Takeshi looked down at his hands. They were steady now, calm, controlled. But inside, he felt a growing fear. How much would he lose if he continued? How much would he gain? Aiko placed her hand on his shoulder. "You helped someone today. Remember that. Purpose is stronger than fear." Takeshi nodded slowly, but doubt remained as they walked back to the tea house. Takeshi looked at the world around him, feeling both stronger and more fragile. Every step forward cost him something. Every lesson opened a door and closed another. Ako stopped at the entrance of the tea house. "Your real test," she said softly, "will come soon. A moment when you must decide between saving someone or saving your own memory." Takeshi felt the weight of her words. Heavy, cold, real. The next days passed slowly, but the changes inside Takeshi grew quickly. Each morning, he woke before sunrise. Each night, he returned home, exhausted, and every lesson with Aiko took a small piece from him. Sometimes it was the taste of his tea. Sometimes it was a street name he had known for years. Sometimes it was a little childhood memory. The losses were small, but they were real. Still, Takeshi continued. He told himself it was worth it. He told himself the technique was helping people. He told himself he had a purpose now, but deep inside, his fear was quietly growing. One late evening, as Takeshi cleaned his calligraphy tools, a loud knock came at his door. Unlike the soft knock from the night he received the old paper, this one was urgent, hard, almost desperate. Takeshi opened the door. A young man stood there, breathing heavily. His eyes were wide with panic. "Please," he gasped. "You're Takeshi, right? The one who helped the woman at the market. I need you. My father, he's at the hospital." Takeshi felt a cold wave run through him. "What happened?" he asked. He's trapped in fear," the young man said, shaking. "He's screaming. Doctors can't calm him. They said he's hurting himself. Please." "The nurses said someone like you helped before." Takeshi hesitated. His heart beat faster. He knew exactly what this meant. Helping someone in that condition would cost him something big, not a small memory, not a simple detail. Aiko had warned him. The greater the fear you come, the greater the memory the technique takes. The young man grabbed Takeshi's hands. Please, he whispered. My father doesn't have much time. Takeshi closed his eyes for a moment. This was the test Aiko talked about. The moment when he would have to choose, help a stranger or protect himself. He opened his eyes. Take me to him. The hospital corridors smelled like medicine and cold metal. Nurses rushed from room to room. A doctor pointed Takeshi toward a room at the far end. Inside, an older man lay on a bed, shaking violently. His eyes were wide with terror, staring at something no one else could see. His breathing was uneven. His nails had scratched the bedsheets. 2 nurses held his arms to stop him from hurting himself. Takeshi stepped closer. The man's fear hit him like a wave, raw, heavy, dark. Aiko had told him once, fear like this enters your mind if you are not ready. Takeshi inhaled slowly, held, exhaled. He placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder. Sir, he whispered, you're safe. The man didn't hear him. Or maybe he couldn't. Takeshi began the technique. The breathing, the internal stillness, the focus. But as he did, something unexpected happened. A memory rose inside him, not from the man, but from his own past. A woman, smiling, her laugh ringing softly, her hand touching his. A warm evening by the river Takeshi cherished deeply. A memory he didn't want to lose. His breath broke for a second. His hands shook. The bowl of water Aiko used in training flashed in his mind. The ripple, the pain, the loss. If he continued, that memory would vanish. Takeshi felt fear grip his own chest. His instinct said, stop, protect yourself, save the memory. But the man in the bed screamed in agony, and his son cried by the doorway. Takeshi clenched his jaw. He had made his choice. The moment he walked into the hospital, he placed both hands on the old man's head, closed his eyes, and went deeper into the technique than he ever had before. The priest Takeshi saw darkness, not his darkness, the old man's. Shadows, broken voices, years of pain trapped in a single moment of panic. Takeshi steadied his breathing. He sent calmness into the man's mind the way Aiko taught him. Slow, soft, gentle. The shaking stopped. The man's breathing eased. His eyes closed. For the first time in hours, he was calm. A nurse wiped tears from her eyes. The young man hugged Takeshi tightly. Thank you, he whispered. You saved him. Takeshi smiled faintly. But inside, he felt something slipping, a light leaving him. His head burned, his vision blurred, and then the memory vanished. The woman's face, gone, her laugh, gone. Her name, gone. All that remained was a faint feeling of warmth, nothing more. Takeshi staggered. He grabbed the doorframe. The young man tried to support him. Are you okay? He asked. Takeshi nodded weakly. Yes, just tired. But he was lying. He felt empty inside. He walked out of the hospital with heavy steps, the night air cold on his skin. The vanishing Takeshi hurried to the old alley. He needed Aiko. He needed answers. He needed help. But when he reached the narrow path, something was wrong. The lantern was not lit. The warm glow was gone. The tea house was gone. In its place stood an old wooden shop, locked and dusty, with a faded sign. Takeshi's breath caught. No, no. He touched the door. It was cold, real, old. Had it always been like this? Had the tea house ever existed? His hands shook. He backed away, confused, scared, lost. He turned in circles, searching for any sign of Aiko. A shadow, a footprint, a sound. Nothing. The alley felt dead. Takeshi leaned against the wall, breathing hard. The memory of the woman he loved. Gone. And now, Iko. Gone too. Or maybe she had never been real. Or maybe the technique was starting to erase more than just memories. Maybe it was erasing his world. A cold wind blew through the alley. The black string around his wrist pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Takeshi felt a chill run through him. Something was very wrong. Very, very wrong. Takeshi stood alone in the empty alley. Rain began to fall slowly, drop by drop, like the sky was crying for him. The tea house was gone. Iko was gone, and the memory of the woman he once loved had vanished from his mind as if she never lived. He pressed his fingers against his temples. His head throbbed. A strange panic twisted inside him, not loud, but deep, like something was pulling him apart from the inside. Why? Why is everything disappearing? He whispered. No answer came. Only the sound of rain on the old wooden shop. Takeshi stepped back and almost fell. He grabbed the wall to steady himself. His breathing grew fast. He needed to understand what was happening. He needed answers. He walked home through the dark, empty streets. Every shadow looked unfamiliar. Every light felt dimmer than before. By the time he reached his house, the rain had soaked through his clothes. His hands were cold. His heart was heavy. He opened the door and stepped inside. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. His small calligraphy table, his ink brush, his books, they were all there. But the room felt emptier, like something important used to be there and was now missing. He sat down and tried to calm himself. He inhaled, held, exhaled, but the breathing technique did nothing this time. The silence inside him was too loud. Slowly, Takeshi reached for a wooden box under his bed, a box he had not touched in years. He opened it. Inside were old drawings, letters, and a small black notebook. His hand shook as he lifted the notebook. The first page had his own handwriting, sharp, clear, familiar. But the words sent chills down his spine. If you are reading this, you have already begun to forget. He froze. His own voice echoed in his mind, not as a memory, but as a warning. He turned the page. The technique does not only take memories, it removes parts of you to create space for something else. Something else. What did that mean? He flipped another page. This time, the words were darker, the handwriting rougher, almost desperate. Iko is not a teacher. She is the guardian of the technique. She appears only to those who have the potential, and the potential always comes with danger. Takeshi's heart tightened. Iko, a guardian, not a normal person. His hands grew cold as he kept reading. When the tea house disappears, the final test begins. Your mind will break or awaken. Takeshi snapped the notebook shut. His breath shook. He finally understood the disappearance of the tea house wasn't an accident. It was a sign, a signal. The final test had begun. To return to the alley, Takeshi stood up, grabbed the notebook, and ran back toward the old alley. His feet splashed against rainwater as he moved through the winding streets. The sky growled with thunder. The world around him felt unstable, almost blurry. When he reached the alley, he gasped. The tea house was back. The warm lantern glowed softly. The door was slightly open. Just like the first night, Takeshi stepped forward, cautiously. His heart pounded in his chest. He pushed the door open and entered. Inside, Iko sat at the same wooden table, calm, silent, waiting. You have come, she said softly. Takeshi clenched his fists. Why did you disappear? I did not disappear, Iko replied. You did? What do you mean? Takeshi asked, confused and angry. Aiko leaned forward. Her voice was quiet but strong. The technique rebuilt parts of your mind. As it took memories, it also shaped your perception. Everything you saw, everything you forgot. Everything that vanished was part of the test. Takeshi stepped back. The memory of the woman I loved. It's gone forever. Iko lowered her eyes. Every great choice demands a sacrifice. Takeshi shook his head. Why me? Why was I chosen? Iko stood up slowly. Her eyes were deep, almost glowing. Because you carry something rare, she said. Your heart seeks purpose, not power. Your pain gives you empathy. Your quiet mind gives you strength. People like you are born once in 100 years. Tachi felt no pride, only sadness. What is the final test? He asked. Aik raised her hand and pointed toward the back of the tea house. A door appeared there, a door Takeshi had never seen before. This door will show you the last truth, she said. What truth? That the biggest battle, Iko whispered, is always inside yourself. And the strongest mind is the one that refuses to lose itself. The door Takeshi approached the door slowly. His hand trembled, but he pushed it open. Inside was darkness, deep, endless darkness. He stepped inside. The door closed behind him. There was no floor, no walls, no ceiling, just darkness. Then suddenly, a voice echoed around him. You want control? Takeshi turned. No one was there. The voice came again. You want purpose? Another voice followed. You want power? Takeshi covered his ears. The voices grew louder. They overlapped, twisted, changed tones. He felt memories flashing: the tea house, the hospital, the old man, his childhood fear, the woman he loved. Pieces of his life burned and blurred around him. The darkness tried to swallow his identity. Takeshi screamed, "Enough!" Silence fell instantly. A soft light appeared in front of him. Inside the light, a younger version of himself stood, the scared child from his memory, crying in a small, dark room. Takeshi stepped closer. The child looked up. Why did you forget me? The child asked. Takeshi's throat tightened. I didn't forget you. I was afraid. The child reached out a hand. Takeshi reached out his own. When their hands touched, the darkness shattered. Awakening, Takeshi opened his eyes. He was back in the tea house. The light was warm again. Iko stood beside him. You passed? She said softly. Takeshi felt something strange. His mind was clear, calm, strong, balanced, not empty, not broken. Whole? What did I do? He asked. You faced your deepest fear, Iko said, and did not run from it. That is true control. Not controlling others, but controlling the chaos inside yourself. Takeshi nodded slowly, finally understanding. Will my memories return? He asked. Aiko looked at him for a long moment. Some will, she said. Some will not. But the important ones, the ones connected to your purpose, those will find their way back. Takeshi closed his eyes. He felt peace, real peace, for the first time in years. Iko stepped toward him. This is the end of the forbidden technique, she said. What you do next is your choice. Takeshi looked at the lantern light. His voice was steady, strong. I will help people, but not for power, not for control, for purpose. Iko smiled gently. That, she whispered, is why the technique chose you. Takeshi walked out of the tea house and into the rising sun. He had lost memories. He had lost pieces of himself, but he had found something far greater: clarity, purpose, strength of mind. He did not control others. He controlled himself, and that was the real secret behind the forbidden technique.